Thank you, everybody. We'll try to keep this interesting for you and move things along. To my right, I have Eric Seufert, and he's with Network, and I'll let these guys give their, kind of little introductions about what they do. Next to Eric is Emily Klock, who is with the 101, and she's also worked with Disney, Atari, and Jax. And then we also have Fred Chesnais next to Emily, who's the CEO of Atari. So we have two Atari people here. They currently don't work together. Emily started before Fred, and now Fred is now running Atari. So Eric, why don't you just give a quick little bio on you, and then we'll go down the panel and we'll start.
Yeah, can I borrow your?
Yeah, sure.
Hi, my name is Eric. I run platform at a mobile gaming company called Network. Prior to that, I built a company called Heracles, which I actually sold to Network, and that's how I joined the company, through the acquisition of Heracles. Prior to that, I was the vice president of user acquisition at Rovio, which makes Angry Birds. And before that, I was at various mobile gaming companies and Skype.
Hi, my name is Emily. I have a small consulting business that helps startups and companies with new technologies with their entertainment relationships. And that can be anything from inbound licensing, working with the digital marketing teams, and actually doing selling the tech IP into whether it's a toy company or robotics and things like that. So runs the gamut. I've worked for Disney Consumer Products on the consumer electronics side and doing Toys to Life. Worked for Jax Pacific and worked for Atari in between Fred's stays at Atari, and background is with Texas Instruments and Computer Sciences Corporation. So started with a software background and then went into B2C, and so I'm here.
Fred?
Good afternoon. So a long time ago, I was advising a French company, a French video game publisher, as a banker. We saw an opportunity in acquiring the Atari brand from Hasbro. So we engineered the deal. We renamed, the company was Infogrames. We renamed the company Infogrames, Atari, sorry, across the world. We sold the company in 2007 to a hedge fund, because we had some headwinds, I would say. 5 years later, so I kept doing things on my own, looking into licenses such as Gillian Michaels. I've done games with Gene Simmons. I was also working with other celebrities. And then came late 2012, the hedge fund called me back. They wanted out. They had lost a lot of money. And they were afraid to basically be sued in France. So I bought the company Atari back from them. They had a very good, nice idea of filing for bankruptcy in the US, so I took care of that as well. And now, 4 years later, I don't want to say we're back, because we're doing a lot of stuff and there's still a lot of things to do. But yeah, I've selected a couple of business lines, and I'm pushing forward with the brand, so we can talk about that as well.
Great. So these guys are going to be able to give us some good information on the branding and licensing side, on the game developer perspective and on the UA perspective, and also from the licensor perspective. And I'll try to extricate as much information from them as I can, whether they like it or not, because they're up here on the panel and we'll put the pressure on them. But a good branding and licensing panel doesn't have to start with a little story. A couple years ago, I was at G2E, which is the gambling conference in Vegas, which is like where everybody is. We were at a party, standing around the pool by the Hard Rock Hotel. A lot of people, a lot of drinking going on. And I see across the pool is this guy. And he's like 6'5", tall, very tall, older guy. Looks like Jack Quillane, like the exercise guy. Jet black hair. But it's like, and he's got these two strippers, one on each side, hanging on his shoulders. I'm like, wow, what? And everybody we're all kind of looking at this guy, because it's, well, maybe that's Vegas. You do kind of see that stuff there. And someone said to me, like, go up and find out who that guy is. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, that guy looks familiar. Who is he? So, of course, I had a couple of drinks, and I agreed to go do it. And so I walk over to this guy, and I said, I kind of look at him. He kind of looks at me, and I was like, I said, do I know you? And he said, you should. It was bad Southern accent. It was, you should. And I said, I'm like, God, I'm really sorry. Like, have we met or something like that? He goes, you probably watch me on TV. And I'm thinking, like, God, who is this? This is like, oh, it's somebody famous, and I don't know who it is. And he's like, my name is Max Baer. And I'm like, Max Baer? Max Baer is like, come on, don't you remember Jethro Bodine? And so it's like, so it's Jethro from the Beverly Hillbillies. So those of you that are old enough to remember the Beverly Hillbillies, this was the sort of the dopey son of Jed Clampett, who came to Beverly Hills. So I said, well, I got it. So Max, what do you do? I'm doing this because we have an hour to burn here. So I said, Max, what are you doing here in Vegas with these strippers here? He goes, well, it's like, I'm here for my game. I said, what do you mean? A Beverly Hillbillies game. I got the rights to the Beverly Hillbillies. And I'm like, oh, wow. I was like, how did you do that? He goes, well, like 10, 15 years ago, the guys at CBS, they didn't know what the hell they're doing. They decided to give me the game. So they gave Jethro, or Max, the rights to the CBS game, I think in terms of the CBS property, in return for him not like charging them residuals. So he makes this deal, he gets the game, they deploy, I think like in the beginning, like 65 different machines with the Beverly Hillbillies slot machine into Vegas. And I said, wow, how is the game done? He goes, well, enough to buy me a new Cadillac every week. So I think that's like a really good way to kind of start off licensing and the opportunities in licensing. Because you never know where it's going to come from. And with licensing, and I think we can maybe talk a little bit about the opportunities for classic brand licensing and the value that it specifically had, for social casino. But I think like the Beverly Hillbillies is like kind of like from an idiot, like not idiot, but like from Max Baer, who plays an idiot, he sure was smart enough to realize a great branded opportunity. So I'm going to jump off from that and just put it out to you guys. Can you share with us what you think any really great recent branded gaming opportunities, ideally if you can kind of focus them to social casino, if not, regular gaming opportunities you've seen deployed within the last year or so?
I think Zynga's done a really good job at basically recognizing the value of the sort of like bargain bin IPs and acquiring those for social casino stuff. I mean, if because the deal terms are usually you can triangulate your way into them because Zynga's public. They don't pay a lot for those IPs, and I think they ultimately make more money with them than they would without them, just because Zynga's got a pretty massive war chest. I mean, they can spend as much as they want on UA. I think they're fairly rational, so they don't just waste money. And so you could see like, well, okay, and again, all this is public. You can look through their most recent 10K, but they spend a lot on these games that they're branded, and they kill pretty quickly the ones that aren't. So I think they've done a good job with that. I think I have a story kind of similar to yours. It's not very long, but so I was working with a company, and we had a game. We had a license from like a reality show, and just like you were saying, like that the license stuff can come out of nowhere. One of the developers on the game was just randomly friends with one of the guys who happened to be on the show that season, and the people on the show are celebs, and so he just we were able to reach out to him rather than going through the manager, and he was like, yeah, sure, I'll be in the game. So we were able to use his likeness in the game for basically free, just because he did it as like a favor, and he thought it was cool to show people the game with him in it. So
excellent. Do you guys have any thoughts on any great game branding opportunities that you've seen? Like I said, it doesn't have to be social casino.
So I think, we've been talking about this for a little while in gaming, but just the resurgence of Pokemon through Pokemon Go. That's a brand that, it's a gaming brand. It's a good toy brand, but it definitely goes in cycles based on each generation. And for the game developer to actually go, what are we going to do with it? How are we going to reimagine that with some new technology and layering that upon GPS that already existed, I thought was just absolutely brilliant and really opened up a different way for us to look at not just brands, but games and gamifications of things that we do on a daily basis. So probably lean towards that one because for fans of Pokemon, it brought it back. And now they're able to do more toy deals and things with that brand.
So I think it really depends where you want to go with your company. I've done a couple of, I've been in very different situations. So for instance, I left Atari and I was just basically, inside Atari, I was the executive producer up to 2007. So I was raising the money, buying the IPs, organizing the production. I was not the publisher, but I was basically either securing our own IPs or buying some. So we were the master licensee from Hasbro. We had a lot of IPs there from Hasbro that we were developing. When I left, I was in a very different, situation because I was basically rebooting or starting my own company. I was doing outside what I'd been doing inside Atari. So I started to do the same thing. Let's grab one IP. Let's go to a studio. They're going to give me a pitch, and then I'm going to pre-sell a game to a distributor. I'm going to get an advance, and with that, I'm just going to pay the game. And then I'll deliver the master to the distributor, and I'll get the royalties. The first one worked out very well. Because I decided to go with a brand. I decided to, I selected Jillian Michaels. She was at the time, she was not yet the star of The Biggest Loser, but she was starting to become the star. So I had a very good combination, a very good alignment of planets. Because I had Jillian, she was becoming the star of The Biggest Loser. The TV show was just taking a lot of steam. And on top of it, I started to work on the game while the balance board was not even in the US. And then the balance board arrived, and our game was ready for the balance board. So it was a very good combination, but it helped me to basically define the strategy where I wanted to go with my production company. So I started with that. But at the same time, there are other instances where it's bad to have a brand because you can't sell the game. I do not own, the Jillian Michaels license. So I knew it had a term. So after 5 years, I was out. And as an investor, I'm always looking, to basically get the terminal value, get an IP that I can resell. The problem with a license is you have basically 3 problems with a licenses. And the first one is it has a term. So you have to know that it's just the ride will stop one day, right? So as long as you know that, and it's the same today for Atari. We have one license. We know it has a term, so you can keep extending. But especially if it's an individual, it will get old and it will stop one day. So with Jillian, it stopped after 5 years. It was fine because she had, not her days, but people had moved on to something else. So that's the first problem. It has a term. The second problem is that sometimes it's a bad license. When you sign it, you think it's a good license, but when you publish the game, it's a bad one. I'm just going to give you an example. I was the CEO of Backyard Sports, and we used to have a player on the box, and 1 year we selected Dante Culpepper. So it's a game for kids. It's all at Walmart. It's for kids up to 10 years old. And Dante Culpepper was the quarterbacks of the Vikings, and they got caught on the sex cruise. And I got the call from the Walmart manager, and it was very bad. So I can tell you, sometimes it hurts to have a name on the box. So you have to be very, very careful. Sometimes you really have to check, the type of license, especially with individuals. Got lucky also with Gene Simmons, but he had a lot of buzz around him when I was releasing his guitar for Guitar Hero and all these guitar games. So it's very, very tricky. You really, especially with celebrities, I think it's good. It gives you a lot of, buzz, attention at the beginning, but you really have to think long term. It's going to stop, and yeah, they may get caught. Sometimes it's good for the game, sometimes it's really, really bad, and you can basically it can wipe out your investment in the game. So you really have to think twice before getting a license. So finally, personally, I think I always like to have a license, at least to start, because you get attention. I don't know how many apps are out there every day, submitted to Apple. I think getting an attention, that's why I came back to Atari. It has a cost at the beginning, because you usually have to pay minimum guarantee, although now with Atari, even I'm trying to get some licenses for spokesperson, for instance, for Atari Casino. I can get the license without any minimum guarantee or without any advance, but I always prefer to have that. Even if I have to write a check, I think it's better for me to write a check for an advance to somebody rather than just putting out there $100, $200, $300,000 of marketing because you don't know what's going to happen. At least you can basically map the future or try to anticipate on something if you deal with a license. I think it's better. It's easier for me. It's really a question of character.
So I just want to ask a little bit about, Emily, we were talking about celebrity branding versus like just straight IP branding, you know, versus like, it's like, I'm going to go get the rights to this person's name and likeness, even though they may be a star in this TV series, or I'm just going to go get the TV series. Do you want to talk a little bit to that and the opportunities versus, Fred saying the issues with celebritydom versus
Right.
go getting, like, I'm going to get Kim Kardashian versus getting the Kardashians for my game?
So it honestly depends on the property and the flexibility of that agent or the agency who's working on it, whether it's a reality show and who that celebrity is. And I think so. There's limitations on what you can do with the actual property of the show. You might not have rights, like Eric said about having someone's likeness in there. They might have been approved that you might have a digital style guide where you can take images, but you might not have any voiceover rights. You might not have anything else than that. So what you can actually do with it might really be limited. It also means the actors or the talent might not show up to any of your press events or help you with marketing at all. Whereas if you go to the manager or the agent and you do a side deal with the talent, they're often a little bit more engaged because they're getting the money directly, whereas the property is getting the money and the talent's just getting a little bit, if any. It's part of a deal that's already been signed. So I think there's a lot more flexibility when you're dealing with individual talent, from marketing, PR, showing up at things, but also it can become much more expensive because you're paying for travel. You might be paying for green M&Ms only in their room, or you might be having to pay for first class tickets only at the last minute, and talent will start having some requests they're kind of odd. So it just depends, I think, where you're wanting to go with it. But as Fred definitely suggested, you need to be very careful about the talent you pick, whether it's a sports star, a reality show person, a YouTube celebrity. With what's gone down in the last few weeks, it takes one bad piece of press, or according to the YouTube star, something that he filmed himself, to take everything down the tubes, and all of your investment is just gone. So I think you have to be very careful about who you're picking, the length of what you want that deal to do. If you're just wanting some attention for 6 months to a year, good attention, bad attention, then go for it.
Can I piggyback on that? So I think, in my experience, the difference also is that, if you're dealing directly with the talent, they can be kind of like irascible and unreasonable. Whereas if you're dealing with like a company that owns a brand, they're business people, they're professional, and so the entire interaction, I think, just is generally more professional when you're dealing with a company that is in the business of licensing IP, especially if they've done games, right? So like the biggest problem I ever ran into was working directly with like the talent and through their management when they have zero experience working with games or really licensing their likeness out at all. The second most was when I worked with like a company that just licensed their IP, but they generally do that with like other forms of media and not games. And so they value games kind of on a different sort of standard. And then the best is obviously if it's a company that licenses IP and they've done it for games before and they understand that whole process and the sort of like incentives and the potential for the outcome. I can give one example. I worked with a rapper, and we were doing a mobile game, and every time we showed him a new like he got a new build, he would just come back with these ridiculous requests. Like it was about him in his hometown, the game, and he wanted us to put prostitutes in the game. And we're trying to explain to him like Apple will never approve this. It will, and you stand no chance of featuring. And he was just like adamant that they had to be. He was like, it's got to be authentic. We've got to have. Anyway, so I mean, we just couldn't disabuse them of this idea that like there must be prostitutes in this game. So that, I mean, I feel like, you know, that kind of thing, if you're dealing with some TV show licenses, you're not going to run into that as much.
And it's interesting, you know, to that point, we haven't seen a lot of specifically social casino games that have kind of featured, like there is no Kim Kardashian social casino game, but there are branded product, you know, social casino games. I think Nick Tallarico had a game with Little Kim that they did.
Jason Aldean.
Oh, Jason Aldean. What? I know that this game it was a disaster for them. It did not work. They ended up, like, you know, I think dropping the app. So like I said, it's, you know, kind of hard to do. We haven't seen a lot of them. I'm trying to think if there's any other deployments of those we've seen.
There's a lot in Europe. So as Atari, we do a lot of Atari casino games in Europe. We do real money, right? With a company, a partnership in Israel. So the situation is very funny because the situation between social casino and real money casino is very, very different. In Europe, it's if you don't have any brand, just don't do it. It doesn't matter how good your game is. There's so much offering that if you want to go, is it social casino or real money? But if you want to go to Europe, if you want to go to the UK, for instance, you need a brand. You need a spokesperson so people get attention, and you need a brand for your game. The logic is super simple. Players, they see the game and say, oh, these guys or this girl or that company, they're still alive or whatever they're doing. They click on it. So at least you're going to get you're going to get the first attention. After that, if your game sucks, they're not going to come back, right? But if the game is good, they'll stay. It's as simple as that. You have, like, when you have 1,000 games out there available to play, if there's a connection, and that this is what the license would basically bring to the table. If there's a connection, at least you're going to get attention. They're going to give it a try. If it's bad, they're not going to come back. But if it's good, they'll stay for a sufficient amount, an amount of time that is sufficient for you to try to retain the player. You know, we know exactly, for instance, in Europe, we know that basically we have averages. We know it's 26 months. We know the first 3 months they're going to lose $300. The first 6 for 3 months, then the following 3 months, we're going to lose another 200, so that's 500. We know that the lifetime over like 26 months is slightly over $900 for a real money casino game. So you know how much you can pay for these players. If you can pay for less than that, fine. And this is what the brand will give you. It's you get attention. Otherwise, you're just another game. You're not. Personally, I would never. So that's why I bought Atari back, because I know that, and we've proven that. We have like I can show you the stats. It's every time we've put a game out there, people initially clicked on it very, very rapidly because they wanted to say, oh, they're still alive. What are they doing these days? Click. Fine. That's all you want. You want at least 1 click, 2 clicks, and then it's your job to keep them. If you can't keep them, it's either you're bad or your game is bad. But that's what the brand will give you. I think it's worth it. I'm okay to pay 7%, 8% of our GGR or even 10% of the GGR to any celebrity. It's, I'll do it any day, any day.
Eric, we were talking also into that line about brands and IP as a way to kind of supercharge your UA. But you also had some concerns about engagement. So maybe you want to talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, well, when people build these models, I mean, that's like, maybe I should take a step back and explain why I'm on the panel. So prior to having my company be acquired, I was doing consulting while building my company. And so I ended up consulting for a lot of social casino companies, but also just generally consulting for gaming companies with licensing deals. So that's why I'm here. And generally I'd be brought in to like help them model out, you know, the do we license this or not, you know, scenario planning. And I've seen this done 2 ways. One is, okay, we acquired this license and exclusively for the purposes of assisting with user acquisition. So we assume that there's some increase in click-through rate because we have this IP, and that decreases the CPI by some percentage, and so we get some benefit there. And then that works out or doesn't based on the volume of installs we think we're going to get and our total budget. And then the other approach I've seen is, well, okay, we don't care about the UA benefits, or they're just sort of like incidental, and we'll put that aside. And we model in some increase in engagement, which is sort of like a proxy for an increase in LTV, right? So we're going to get more money to spend on marketing because the brand actually captures people's attention more than our game would have otherwise. I feel like the second approach is not as robust because I feel like that often ends up being a crutch for a bad game. I think people see that they have like metrics in soft launch, and I've seen this happen. Like at a company I worked at, we did this, and the metrics in soft launch weren't good enough to launch it. They weren't good enough to justify a hard launch, a global launch. And so what they did was they licensed an IP, thinking, okay, this will juice the metrics and make it performant. I think the UA mentality around licensing is better because A, you can model that, I think, in a more sort of like functional and transparent way, and B, you can measure it quickly. So, I mean, you can kind of know early on whether or not it's working. And then you can also proxy that stuff before you even do the deal, which just makes it a lot more straightforward to bring into like the sort of like commercial element of it. Because like the worst thing that happens is you get like everyone really excited about an IP deal and you haven't done any of the due diligence, or you haven't modeled it out, and then like, okay, someone does that in the midst of the deal and everyone's really excited, and they kind of just sort of ignore it because it's so exciting to be working with some like really cool property. And that's always like, that always kind of, I think, has an unfortunate ending.
What about in the structuring of these deals, and what is it going to cost me to get some of these rights? Obviously, if I'm a independent gaming studio, I'm not going to get the Batman rights. But what kind of deals are maybe open to me? Emily, do you want to talk on? We talked a little bit about some of these licensing agencies that are out there.
So from a startup or an independent one, you're not going to get a AAA title or anything like that. You're not going to get something at a major studio like a Batman, but for whether you're looking at different classic TV shows, you're looking at some game shows, some retro video games, not Atari. I know what Fred charges for things. Sometimes you can...
Very flexible.
So you can start off in the low six figures for IP, but I think I currently work with a lot of startups and they don't even put that money forward, and I would caution people, if they're not willing to put that forward, then they shouldn't probably be in the licensing game at all, because it just goes up from there. But there are opportunities with marketing teams.
Those are MGs.
Those are advances. Those are just advances.
Okay.
So yeah, the six figures.
Like what kind of six figure? Like, be specific on the numbers.
15, 20, 25,000.
25,000.
Yeah.
Against the revenue share of like what kind of share of the revenue?
I'd say that's probably a quarter of where it needs to be.
A quarter of the net gaming revenue after
Yes.
we've gotten it back from the Apple Store. Okay.
At least. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot.
There are other ways also to do the deal. You could also have a, you create a company and then you give a stake to the licensor. As a licensor, for instance, we've done that, and we're also in the process of doing it, because we recognize, when there's a unique situation where there's something very interesting that we would like to be associated with. I'm talking as Atari as a licensor, all right? Us granting our license. Or brand as a license to a third party. If we realize that there's something unique that we can help, over the very, very long run, we're a listed company, so I announce, deals as they're signed. I've done deals where we grant a license in exchange for a share in the company. We've done that with a guy doing earbuds. We've done that with other types of products, especially casino. We're also working on a token, and that will be also the model there. Because I realize that sometimes there's something unique, and the point is to go and raise more money. So it's better for us to be part, so to say, be with the motion, be part of the journey. So help with the brand. It's definitely better to go with a name, but without a name, because at least you don't have to explain. It's sometimes so very interesting for us, and much more interesting for us, to go and act as investors. So get some shares for free in exchange for a brand or a name or something, and then just be part of the journey, be part of the team, and see where it goes. It's you can structure a deal, in many different manners, where you have the simple licensing arrangements, but you can have, as Atari, and I've said it, I've created a concept called Atari Ventures. If I see something interesting, yeah, I'll grant a license, and we'll take some shares in the company. I'm fine with that.
And I think that innovative thought is kind of hard to find with the way Fred's thinking. I've had opportunities where you can have those discussions. If you're dealing with a Warner Brothers or a Disney, it's not necessarily going to happen that way. But there are groups there who might see your platform and have other opportunities for it. And they might help you in different ways. So you might be getting it, it's not the full rights, you might be getting it from a promotional standpoint because they want to further invest in your platform development to use it for something different that you might not even thought of. So it's not necessarily taking shares, but they are investing in a different way. I've seen that happen.
I would just make 2 points. So the first is that I think the biggest mistake I've seen people make when they do these deals is that they don't account for marketing spend in the rev share,
yep.
right? So if you're giving a 25% rev share out, without any consideration for recouping your UA spend, you're never going to be able to scale the product. It's kind of like the worst possible outcome for both parties. But it can also be really hard to convince the other party, if they're not used to licensing, especially for mobile games, that hey, we need the UA, we need to reinvest the revenue we're getting into UA so we can grow the game, so we'll both make more money. That can be really contentious. And the thing is, once you have the contract done, it's almost impossible to renegotiate it to then say, hey, look, we've got to reinvest some of the revenue into marketing because we can't grow otherwise.
But then you open yourself up to audit. Well, you open yourself up to audit anyway, but...
Well, you should be sharing that data, on a weekly basis, I would think. That's my experience. And the other thing is, I think it's really awesome when the IP holders take shares, but I think that's also usually got to be accompanied by some sort of investment beyond just granting the IP. So I think probably one of the best examples of this in mobile is if Next Game's Walking Dead. I think just the sort of relationship that they have seems really, really productive. So basically, I don't remember the company that owns AMC. They invested in the company, and that's public because Next Games went public. And they gave the rights, and they gave them sort of like in-kind marketing around the show, right? And so everyone's incentives are aligned. They own part of the company that makes the game, so they want them to do well. They gave them money to help them develop the game and do marketing. They do marketing for them around the show, and so the game has really grown.
Symbiotic.
Yeah, it's really symbiotic, really great dynamic, and the company's done really, really well and that game specifically has done really, really well.
Okay. There's also another kind of licensing that exists out there that I've had the experience of working with, which definitely has its costs to it, even though sometimes it comes with no upfront guarantees or advances or anything. And that's direct licensing of content from various slots providers that are out there. In the casino gaming business, as probably many of us know, there are tons of people out there building slot games that have these games that are on remote gaming servers, and they are trying to sell or license these games to various online casinos. Most of them are dealing with the real money world and dealing overseas where there's many more deployments of real money games. But now, in the last couple of years with the advent of social casino and seeing the opportunities, a lot of these companies are now starting to open themselves up and to making their games available via the RGS to those of us that are producing and developing social casino apps. We've struck a number of these deals when I was at the Golden Rat Studios for our City of Games app. We brought in and closed a number of these deals. But it gets you great slot content, but often it's sort of like stuck in a sort of like a web view frame. You don't have a lot of control over this content that comes in because it comes to you with the framing device that this other game developer has chosen. In addition, it's also working with various APIs and bringing this content in has a price and a toll on your dev team as well as their own dev teams as well. And getting the commitments from other outside dev teams to give you their content has resulted in months worth of nightmare processes working back and forth to try to get this content that's coming in. But it's a legitimate way to get really great, what I'll call like branded content in the social casino space. And there's tons of it out there, and you go to G2E or ICE or all these conferences, and they're guys that just, they want to unload this content, they want to see it deployed. But as I said, many of them have not done it yet, so they're either over anxious to do it and will promise you everything, or they're very skeptical because they've gotten burned. So the opportunities are sort of a mixed opportunity as we've kind of seen it going forward, but definitely opportunities. But I think it was said earlier, what Adam was talking about, with opportunities on for serious content from providers like IGT or Aristocrat, because they have made investments already in social casino products. They're not too likely to give you their games to make you a competitor of their own game. But there are a few deals that are out there, to be made. So anyway, we're talking about more on the licensing side here. Can any of you guys think of any great? We'll talk about their existing brands, but there are also brands sort of in the public domain. Have you guys seen any really great, interesting public domain type brands that have been deployed that people have said like, oh wow, I just co-opted Goldilocks or something like that that's out there, and then it's like people will think like, oh, they paid for that brand, but they really didn't have to pay anything.
Sherlock Holmes and Dracula, these brands are available.
I've seen a King Kong.
King Kong?
Yeah.
Any seen anyone from like food brands or non-entertainment brands that have been used out there in the market? I guess the Jolly Green Giant is I don't have any slot games. Tabasco.
I've seen some work with Tabasco, I think.
Okay. There is a licensing show that goes on every year, and I hear it's a huge event in New York. I've never been. I don't know whether
It's
any
in
of you
Vegas
guys.
now.
Okay, so tell us about that. Is that an opportunity? Should I be going to the licensing show to look for games to potentially license for, specifically for social casino?
Actually, so the licensing show exists every year in Las Vegas, and a lot of it is big movie studios who are doing their things that are going to be at theatrical, but often it's smaller agents who have art licenses and things that you wouldn't necessarily think would have. It comes off the top of your head, but there are some really excellent things you can find just by walking the floor. There's one group that represents a lot of the AMC shows. They have a smaller booth. They're called Striker Entertainment, and the founder will be speaking, I think, tomorrow or Thursday. And they represent things from AMC, Stupid Buddy Studios, some of the IP that can't be in a toy license or really can't be necessarily in a Toys R Us or a happy-go-lucky Walmart, a lot of edgier things, and you wouldn't know what they were representing if you weren't walking the show. They've got some really, really quirky things that will work, and the brand owners will be much more flexible with what can be done. So I definitely think it's worth going to. I think you need to do your research beforehand, because oftentimes people's calendars are booked completely, especially the digital teams. So I'd say, just like when you're coming here, look who's going to be there, see if you can contact them beforehand and get on their calendar, and then spend about half your time walking and talking to people, then half the time in meetings that you've already scheduled.
Eric, when you were with Rovio, did you guys ever go out there and publicly say, hey, we've got Angry Birds and this IP is available? Did you try to sell your IP?
Yeah, I never went. I saw the pictures. It looks fun. I guess people have a pretty good time out in Vegas. I don't know how productive it was. I think that's yeah. Anyway, I think we got the zero but Rovio definitely goes every year.
Okay. So I guess we have some opportunities for some questions if anybody has any specific questions.
So first, while you're on the topic, what time of year is that licensing show? Do you know?
It's used to be in June. Now it's at the end of May, right before the holiday weekend, around the 20th, 22nd, 23rd. It's called Licensing Show or Licensing Expo.
Okay.
And I think it's free to the public, but you do need to register beforehand.
Okay, and then the other part was you were talking about some companies that do slot development. You said to go to ICE show and G2E. Do you have any of the names of those kind of companies that you could share with us on the spot?
pretty much almost like you could go walk the floor. Like ICE is the International Casino Expo is coming up in England in London in next month, and there are hundreds of companies that are licensing their slot product. Pretty much anybody that has a slot machine, they've created digital slot content that are available for licensing.
Great panel. Thank you very much. Question. So there are some brands which are going to be evergreen. They'll just last generation over generation, and whatever new media comes out, they will adapt and it'll be there. But given where we see demographic changes, the rise of YouTube stars, things of this nature, what do you see the implications for the next few years in terms of these new, call them brands, and their impact on social casino gaming specifically, or games just more generally? That change, if you will.
I'll start with that one. It's very simple. If you take Atari, it was very well known, 70s, 80s. Now definitely the audience is older, and we're just getting used to that, and I recognize that. That's why I'm doing casino. That's why we have a lot of casino games out there targeting in the UK essentially a female demographic, and I recognize that. I know that the average, that player, I have basically two categories of players. I have an old audience that knows Atari because it reminds them of good memories. And the beauty of my position right now is that in most studios or in most companies, people who were born in the 80s have positions of power. And this is why you have retro gaming. This is why you have movies like Ready Player One, in March with Spielberg, because Warner Brothers is putting a lot of money behind it. It's no surprise. You have people who were raised with the brand who have positions of power, right? So eventually they put the money, and just like me, put the money, in things I like. So that's the first type of audience I have. That's an easy part of it. As long as I'm not trying to sell them first-person shooters or racing games, I know that they are older, so I have to adapt to that. That's my first problem. My second problem is, of course, just like any brand, to basically address a younger crowd. And here, I have basically a disadvantage because I'm the brand of the parents, which is not necessarily good. So I have to find other ways. So with the Atari brand, the way I play it in terms of licensing is more to play with, okay, guys, we're part of the history of video games. It's pretty cool. We've done this, we've done that. Now we've changed, but it's more difficult for us. It's definitely more of a challenge because it's true that there's much more competition, so to say, in that field. And we try to go with retro gaming. We try to go with simpler stuff, more playing not the nostalgia thing, but the fact that it's part of history, and you have to know, you can't ignore it. But it's a different challenge.
I think where things have gone with YouTube celebrities, reality celebrities before that, I don't think that's going to necessarily change on kind of new media celebs or what that brand is going to be. I think we're going to continue to move forward on those things as YouTube develops into, we are already having more over-the-top network streaming, and we have more and more talent that we're seeing. So I think that's not going to go anywhere. I think it's very important to know what the demographic that you're going after, to figure out what your portfolio needs to look like. And there are experts out there who can help you figure out which one's going to be the right one for when you're going to launch. If you want to go to any of the digital talent agencies, they've got the numbers of where everyone's trending. And if you're saying, I'm going to develop it and I'm going to do it for out here, then they'll help you to make those decisions. But I think it starts really with your demographic and where you're wanting to go.
I don't know if I caught the question correctly, but I think with like the emerging brands, how could you find some application for social casino? I think a good example there is Candy Crush, right? So I mean, when I was at Rovio, we got pitched to do a social casino game, and like we had a somewhat serious conversation about it internally. But the problem was Angry Birds demographic is young boys, and Candy Crush that demographic is older women, right? So it's like a perfect fit for social casino. And so they are now working with Play Studios. This is like pretty public information, I hope, and building out social casino games, which makes total sense. I don't know, the YouTube stuff, there's not a whole lot coming out that I think is going to be, you know, have any sort of like longevity in terms of entertainment like that. Some of these guys are just atrocious. Like that Logan Paul guy, I never heard of him before the kerfuffle. And
We're too old.
What? Maybe. But what a nightmare. I mean, that guy's just an asshole. Like, he's just, all of his videos are him being a jerk, like walking around being loud, and like, so it wasn't really surprising that there was this big controversy. That, I mean, that could never be a brand. That guy was, you know, absent this controversy, he would have been a flash in the pan. It's hard for me to imagine like big brands coming out of these, you know, kind of YouTube self-promoters.
But it really is about knowing your audience. I mean, that's ultimately, you know, it's like, do you envision one, like specifically in social casino? Are you going to see that guy on a reel strip in a slot machine? I don't think so. Are you going to see a YouTube celebrity? Probably not. You've got to remember, you know, historically it's been 35 to 65 to 70-year-old housewives who've been playing these games. Those are the whales. Those are the highest paying users. Is that brand going to appeal to them? Probably not. Is Martha Stewart going to appeal to them? Maybe. Is The Crown going to appeal to them? Yes. You know, those are the kind of shows that they're consuming. Look at the classic television, you know, channels. Those are where the opportunities are. And, you know, the kind of the farther you go back, you can kind of reverse mine stuff that is, you know, has kind of like fallen out of the mainstream, but still has a huge value to these players. I mean, the best thing is like, go to the floor in the casino. Don't go to like the Palms. You know, go to some crappy casino off the strip. See what machines that they have that are running. That the lady that is like towing the oxygen machine is bringing. You know, like staying there, like she's just falling over. That's the content that you're gonna want to license. That will work. It's guaranteed. Why? Because those people have stayed with the machine long enough to where they're gonna literally die at the machine. They're going to die there. And we've seen, like, to that note, that's why they park. If you go to the back of the loading entrances, you see like 1 or 2 ambulances parked out there, you'll know you're at the right casino.
But to kind of go along those lines, we've talked about celebrity, we've talked about YouTube, and we talk about demographic. I think something interesting is the Jed Clampett, going back to that. I think wasn't there a Betty White license done just with Betty White recently? There are beloved celebrities who have some kitsch to them, Betty White being one of them, Dick Van Dyke being another. There are some who might not have massive careers right now who have a really beloved fan base and will do a lot for you that you could look into also. Yeah.
Donnie Marie, that's like
I love them.
Unused, you know, IP for slots. Someone here should go get it.
You see, it's I mean, casual casino, social casino is very different from real money, because real money you don't need a lot of players, right? They're gonna lose easily 200. Their losses, it's your win, right? So they're gonna lose $200, $300 a month, right? So you don't need a lot. The point is to go with a brand or a celebrity or a TV show. TV show works they do work very well because people relate to that. And when you have a TV show, you can have not only one slot machine with one TV show, you have also all the characters of the show, assuming you can just negotiate on the likeness. But the point is that in social casino, it's very different. You need a lot of people because not all of them are going to monetize, and you're going to have only a fraction of them monetizing just a little bit. So real money casino, depending on where you are. So that's why you really have to know what you're going after. Real money casino, again, these are my stats. 26 months, we're going to lose a little bit over $900, like this. So if you know that you have a 6 to 9 month window, you don't need a lot of people to make a very, very decent amount of money. Yeah, it's really, really different.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.